Delighted to say that we're joined by Dan Rolfe from the University of Surrey. Dan is the Deputy Head of UK/EU Recruitment at the University of Surrey. And he's essentially going to look at top tips for your summer university checklist, including top tips of how you can prepare for university, whether you're applying for it for this year or next year, and what you can do over the summer to really help your chances or benefit when you do start university. So without further ado, I'll pass the floor to you, Dan, please.
Great, thanks, John, and hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. As John said, my name's Dan, and I'm from the University of Surrey, and I'm going to talk you through now, as we said, just like a checklist, really, things to think about, and it will vary depending on exactly where you are in your cycle and the university journey and getting to that point. So what I'm going to focus on today, if we just start with in terms of the agenda for the next kind of 10 or 15 minutes, we'll talk you through, and I'm going to come at it from two angles. So firstly, if you're in year 12 or perhaps in a year below year 12, I'm going to start by talking about what you could do this summer. So things to think about over the next few months before you start to make an application this September to look at going to university next September in 2021, or indeed if you're deferring and you're doing a gap year and so on, you might still be applying this year to go in September 2022. So we'll start there. If you're in year 11, if you're in year 10, if you're in a younger year, this is just great to give you some things to think about for maybe this summer as well, but also in future summers and things that come up. It's always good to be prepared. So if you're here and you're a slightly younger year group, that's fantastic. It's great to have you with us today as well. And I'm just going to touch on at the end for anyone in the room that's in year 13 and is actually going to university this summer, just a few things to think about ahead of that. So I'm going to start with virtual events, then have a look at a little bit about research and how that fits in with a personal statement, which is a big part of the application form and something that you can definitely be working on this summer. Then, as I mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about the transition into year 13 for those of you that are looking to go this September. And then I'll finish with a kind of final checklist and a summary of the things that we've discussed. So in terms of preparing for applying, so let's say you're in year 12 at the moment, you're about to start year 13 in September, you've got the summer ahead of you. This is a really good time to be getting a head start and thinking about the university application and getting all the things in place ready for when you kick that off. First this summer, but also when you actually send it in September. So these are some of the things that I would really encourage you to think about. So summer schools, they're a really good opportunity to find out more about your subject. You can find out lots more about a specific university as well, but it's really good to think more about the subject, particularly where you're maybe thinking about studying a subject that you're not doing at the moment at A-level. So this might be a new subject for you, but something you're interested in. And I know obviously this year it's particularly difficult to access those, but there are loads that have moved online, and you can find lots of virtual summer schools that are still taking students. And if you've looked at one earlier and you weren't able to get on, I'd really encourage you to go back and have another look, because many of those do now have spaces as universities have moved them online and have got increased capacity. And I had a look over the last few days and there's quite a few available starting in July. So there's definitely time to get booked onto those and attend. Similar with short courses. So you may have heard of MOOCs, kind of online learning programs, really short courses that are often free that you can do, and they can also give you a taster for your subject, and I'm going to talk a bit more about those in a minute and give you a few examples, but this is a great time to be doing those. Volunteering and work experience will really help. So sometimes work experience might be essential for the course that you're applying for, so then it would be really important to do that this summer. It can also obviously really help when it comes to writing your personal statement, when it comes to talking, for example, in things like interviews, which we'll talk about later, and volunteering as well. So the skills that you pick up, even if it's not directly related, there's so many transferable skills that you pick up through volunteering. And we've been speaking to schools over this week and previous weeks where we know many students are using this opportunity to get involved. And there are a number of organisations that are taking on students 16 and above to do some work experience and or some voluntary work this summer. And I have seen a few providers offering work experience online, and it might look a little bit different. It might not be a week in an office, or it might not be a week on a project that you might have done before, but it's important to remember that it's still valuable. Even if it's a Zoom call, even if it's just talking to an employer, it could be really important. And there's a number of short courses that are linked to work experience, particularly if you're thinking about programs like dentistry, veterinary science, medicine, that may require work experience before you can apply. Virtual open days, so it's a really good opportunity to attend those. And we speak to students all the time that have only been able to go to 2 or 3 open days. But when you apply in UCAS, you have 5 choices. So that could be 5 different universities, 5 different but similar courses. So this is a really good opportunity to go to 5 or more universities and to experience, even if it's online, all of the different options and the different universities that you're thinking about making an application to. Where we've got more time, even if you are still really busy, you've probably got a little bit more time than you would have had otherwise. And whilst the virtual open days are different, they're still really good, and they'll give you a really good taste of student life, the subject, the support that's on offer. It is going to be really important later on, I think, to still go and visit, but it gives you a great chance this summer to do that initial look round and an initial check. Do familiarise yourself with UCAS, so be familiar with the system, with the course search, with the deadlines and how it works, and link to that if there are any additional tests, interviews, auditions that are part of the application process. This is a great time to prepare for those, start to do example tests, and start to make sure that you've got everything in place and that you do meet all the requirements and you're in the best place to take those tests, interviews, auditions and so on. So you've got some time to do that, which is really good. And other things, TED Talks, online virtual exhibitions, online theatre performances that are showcasing. There's loads of different things that you can do that might help you to explore your subject area, give you something to talk about when you go to the university, when you meet academic staff, something to talk about in your personal statement. And if you're at that initial research stage, if you're just starting to think now about going to university and what you might apply to, this will give you an opportunity to explore different subjects. And if you're in year 10 or 11, then an even better chance to really get stuck into that research and think about the different options out there. So a few examples, I've taken these off. These are currently available at the moment. So these are 3 examples from 3 different universities. And this could be a really good opportunity. Say, for example, you're interested in computing, you might be studying IT at the moment, and you're particularly interested in robotics, thinking about doing electronic engineering. There's this program here at Sheffield. Also, maybe you really like biology and chemistry and you're thinking, actually, I don't want to study those kind of pure sciences, but maybe I want to study something related like food science, nutrition, dietetics. Again, there's an option here at Leeds to do that and to explore that subject. And similarly with archaeology at Reading. And there's many more. These are just 3 that I pulled off that are free, that you can access now, that you get a little certificate at the end to show that you've taken part, and will maybe either help to form that personal statement, to prep for the interview and so on, or if you're at that slightly earlier stage, just start to think about things that are outside of the subjects that you've been exposed to through your GCSEs and through your A-levels, and just to give you a bit more choice there. Those are on Future Learn. There's lots of different providers out there, but that's just an example of those there. And also, and I'm thinking now particularly for subjects that interview, audition, or need work experience. So for vets, for example, we know it's going to be difficult at the moment to get work experience ahead of applying this September. But Edinburgh do have an online program. This is about what it takes to become a veterinarian. And lots of universities are looking at accepting these kind of experiences along with others to form part of the work experience, and certainly being more flexible as we go into the application round this September. And maybe you're interested in music, but you're not thinking about performance. Maybe you're thinking more about music technology, music production. There's a program here from the Open University that looks at sound recording and sound engineering. Again, short courses, free, work around you, easily accessible, and really great things to be doing this summer before you apply, or even if you're applying in future years. Okay, so let's move on and think a little bit more about the research stage if you are applying this September, and then if you are, again, how to structure the personal statement and how all of these things link into it. So there's around 50,000, above 50,000 now programs available in UCAS. So this is a really good opportunity to go in, find out all those courses, search by location, the subject area and so on. And maybe, you're thinking, I really enjoy history, I'm studying history at the moment, but actually I'd really interested in looking at something like Viking studies at UCL, or I'm thinking of applying for law, I might want to do it with a language, and you could do it with something like Vietnamese at SOAS. So go and have a look at all these options, look at the thousands, literally thousands of options that are there for you, and start to pick the universities and the types of courses that you'd like to apply for. So when you're doing your initial research, this could be a really good way of actually starting to put all those things that we've just talked about, the experiences that you've had, the short courses, the tasters, and then start to think about, okay, I want to apply for these kind of subjects at these kind of universities. And that might be a really good way of starting the application process this year. And just to show you how that all kind of fits in. So where we are now in the summer, if you're in year 12, we're in the summer now, this is a really good time to be doing that research and getting everything ready. In September, which isn't that far away really, we're in mid-June now, so just a couple of months away, UCAS will open. Actually, this summer you can already start to work on the application and start to fill out some details and so on, but you won't be able to send it until September. But that's not that far away, so it's great. Start now. It's great that you're here today, you're watching this recording, you're looking at the options and thinking about what you can do this summer. This is a great time to start ahead of sending the application in September. You've got that initial early deadline on the 15th of October. Again, not that far away if you're thinking about things like Oxford or Cambridge, medicine, veterinary science, dentistry. So again, another reason to be starting early and starting now. And even that main deadline, so the 15th of January deadline in 2021 for all other courses, it will come around really quickly. And when you're trying to write your personal statement, prepare for interviews, maybe auditions, this will be really kind of a real payoff if you can actually start to work on some of this summer and get in there ahead of everyone else. I won't talk about the other bits now. They happen about a year from where we are, so they're going to happen next summer. But it's really important to do the work that you're doing now ahead of these deadlines in the autumn and early part of last year. So just to understand, we've talked about all the kind of things that you can do to help with the statement, but just to explain quickly what it is so that it kind of fits in with the context. It's a really key element of the UCAS application form, and it's about a page of A4. So it's like one statement, it's 4,000 characters, and that statement will go to all 5 choices. So in UCAS, you can apply for 5 similar courses, normally at 5 different universities. So you've got 5 options and you're going to send one statement to all 5. So when you're putting the statement together, many of the things that you'll work on this summer will really help to be able to form that statement and to put a really convincing argument across. And that's really important because it might be, if you're not being interviewed, if you're not being auditioned, it might be the only opportunity to really promote yourself to the university and to make sure that you do get an offer. And if your course does audition or does interview, it could be that they're using the personal statement to decide whether to invite you to interview or audition. So it's going to be really important either way. It will definitely contribute. All universities use it in different ways, but it will definitely contribute to the decision. And it takes time to do well. So I know I'm asking a lot of you here, but when you're doing your taster days, you're looking at the different TED Talks, you're doing the different short courses, starting to think about the personal statement over the summer as well will be a real big advantage, because then it won't come to September and you're needing to start doing your first draft and writing it for the first time. So it'd be really helpful if you can do it. And we always advise students, this isn't unique to this year, starting early is really important. And we always say start with a really big list of ideas and then you can condense that down later. To get that big list, of course, you do need to be doing some of the stuff that we've recommended today, and then you'll be able to be more succinct and actually cut that down into the much shorter personal statement, avoiding lists at that point and actually thinking about some really good examples from some of the stuff you've done this summer and some of the stuff you'd have done in previous years as well. And these are all the things we ask students to think about and maybe consider putting in, and you'll see they link up really nicely with some of the stuff we said at the start. So things that you'll be doing this summer that will contribute to the statement when you come to write it later in the summer and in the early part of the autumn. And again, if you're 10 or 11, this is great to be starting this early. And what we said at the beginning, make a big list, but then we do need it to be really concise. So once you've collated all those different experiences that you've had, all the things that you've got involved in, we use the ABC checklist, which is think about the action. So think about the summer school, the taster day, the TED talk. How does it benefit the course that you're applying for? Where are the kind of transferable skills there? And then linking it back to the program. How is it course relevant? And if you can do that, then you've got a really, really strong example. And to get to this kind of more short condensed list, you need a much bigger list initially. And that's where the things that you can do this summer will really help. So a little bit just before I finish on the transition for year 13. So if you're in year 13 now, you've got through the last 2 years, so well done to you. And just a few things for this summer. Lots of students ask us how they can prepare. Don't worry too much. There's not a huge amount you can do. Most universities won't be issuing loads of reading lists or access to online materials early, so don't worry too much about that. Just be prepared to be flexible and adaptable. Many universities will be doing hybrid teaching this year, so get that kind of fixed in your mind in terms of being able to adapt to the kind of hybrid model. Join lots of university groups, so get to find out more, meet students. that are in those kind of Facebook, WhatsApp groups, etc. Lots of reading. You don't have to read about the subject. You can read about study skills. You can read about things like academic writing and how to write a good essay for university. There's loads of books available online that you can purchase and have delivered over the summer to read and have some fun, because there's not too much more you can do now. Just being prepared for what it means to be a student, being flexible, meeting people in advance is great. And remember that whilst things are moving somewhat online, this isn't that new for universities, and the university you're going to will have been doing this for a while, and they're well prepared for it. So don't worry, have some fun this summer and enjoy the start in September. Okay, so I'm just going to finish now by just taking you through a final checklist, particularly for those that are applying this September for next year, so the summer checklist. So doing the research now, thinking about what you're interested in, what motivates you, what your passions are, your subjects that you like, and doing lots of things that you can get involved in over the summer that will help to shape those. Attend online events and talks. There's a great opportunity that you've got in the current situation to be able to do that. Sign up for lots of virtual open days and get the maximum exposure to all of those, and that will help you with your 5 choices. Do start to plan the personal statement, maybe even a couple of drafts over the summer, particularly if you've already started to receive help from school and college. That will be a real advantage. Do familiarise yourself with UCAS, the process, the dates, and all the things that are required of you. And keep all your options open. Keep trying things, keep reading, keep doing the short courses, keep having a look around. Nothing's going to be a disadvantage. The more you do, the better. And you hopefully have got some good time over the summer to be able to do that. Okay, perfect. I think that brings me up to time. So I'm going to stop so that I can let our other speakers talk to you about their areas as well today. But as we said earlier, please do ask questions. Happy to take those, and I'll speak to you a little bit at the end as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. Excellent advice as far as the summer, really useful. And the ABC, I'm a big fan of the ABC approach when it comes to personal statements as well. So really glad you mentioned that. Thank you, Dan. If I can now, without further ado, introduce our next speaker, please. That's Llinos, who's joining us from Bangor University. Llinos is a schools liaison officer. And feel free if you want to get your presentation ready, by the way, Llinos, just while I'm introducing you. Llinos, a schools liaison officer at Bangor University. And Llinos is going to do a session today on how to prepare for university interviews. So Llinos, without further ado.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Llinos, and as you just heard, I'm from Bangor University, and I'll be doing a short talk on preparing for interviews. Now, I think what's really useful about this talk is, although it is geared towards university interviews, a lot of the advice about interviews is fairly general. So even if you've got another kind of interview coming up, it might be for a job application or anything like that. I think a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here can be used in that kind of scenario as well. So also bear in mind that I'm keeping it fairly general in terms of the subjects as well. So you need to apply it to your own individual circumstance. And again, if you've got any questions, if you want to put them in the chat, I'll be able to answer them at the end of this session. So what I often get asked is, well, am I going to be interviewed in the first place? And it's difficult to answer that question because we all interview for different reasons at different universities. It not just varies between the universities themselves, but actually the departments within them. So I think the best thing for you to do is just get in touch with the universities and ask. That is the best indication as to whether or not this is going to happen. And I think one of the best ways of getting in touch and finding out is to email or to get on some live chat or something, because it's quite easy then to get a response from them. But I think it's most likely to happen if you're going for a popular course, a competitive course, a vocational course, or an Oxbridge course. So if you're in that category, you're pretty much going to have to expect this to happen. But for everybody else, it can be a little more tricky. So just get in touch because you can prepare yourself for it. Now, I'm not talking about personal statements. However, if you know you're going to have an interview stage, when you're compiling your personal statement, you know you've got an extra stage to get to. So that could help you decide what you're going to include there. So I think it's important to find out whether or not you're going to be interviewed as well in order for the preparation to really be done quite well, because you need to work out, is it because it's vocational? Is it because it's competitive? Is it because of the kind of university that I'm going to? Because the kind of preparation that you need to do really needs to focus around the reason for that interview being there. Whatever it is, they're using that interview to find out more about you, who you are, what motivates you, and they've looked at your application form and decided there's not enough information off there for them to decide, so yes, they're going to offer you a place. But like I said, if it's going to be because it's a vocational course, you need to tailor your answers towards giving that information. If it's because it's competitive, you need to make sure you're making yourself stand out in the answers that you give. If it's because perhaps you're borderline and they're not sure whether or not to offer you a place, it's about convincing them about your suitability for the course and your knowledge about it. So find out what it's going to be, think about the reasons behind it, and preparing is really key. So universities will either get in touch with you to invite you to the interview, or they'll do it through track. Now, if you are invited through track, it's really important that you accept, that you decline, or that you request another date. And if you are going to request another date, make sure it's because you've got a good reason, and do it as soon as you can, just to give yourself a lot more flexibility in terms of knowing when that interview is going to be and preparing for it. Some universities are pretty strict with the dates they will interview on. Some have a little bit more flexibility, others will just have waves, so they might have 3 or 4 dates to interview. So if you can't make it, it's got to be for a good reason, and you've got to make sure that you've got that time to be able to fit it in at the later date. And then in terms of when people interview, it tends to be mostly between November and April. So as I've said, preparation is key. I think this is the really big thing about interviews, whether it's universities, jobs, or anything else. If you put the time and effort in to prepare, in theory, you've got nothing to worry about when it comes to the university interview itself. And I think that you can really train yourself to be good in interviews. If you sit down and think about everything that you need to beforehand, what it essentially means is you're eliminating any kind of distractions. So whether the distractions are how you're going to get there, where you need to be, what you need to prepare, what you need to think about in that interview, get all of that sorted so it's done, so you can just focus on the task in hand when you actually get there. So things that you need to prepare beforehand, as I've said, you need to confirm attendance. Even if you don't have to, I recommend doing it. It's just polite. They know that you're turning up and you know it's all sorted. And do you need to arrange a time or rearrange it? So again, it's just about getting it done so that you know when that interview is going to be. Find out then what kind of interview it's going to be too. So not only do we have different reasons behind interviewing you as universities, we have lots of different formats as well. And again, the kind of format that it's going to be should really inform you about what they expect from you at the interview and the kind of things that you need to prepare in advance. So it could be a formal interview where you have to get through this process to be offered a place on the course. It could be fairly relaxed and informal. I applied for law when I went to university. I had 2 formal interviews, 1 exam involved and 1 informal one. And for the informal one, it was literally just sitting, having a very casual chat with a member of staff. So it's very, very different to the panel interview that I had with 3 people interviewing me following an exam. So find out what it's going to be. So it could be one-to-one, which is you and another member of staff, a panel, as I've just mentioned. It could be an MMI, so that's multiple mini interviews. So this is like the speed dating for interviews. So you might have 7 to 10 different stations, a task or question that you're asked at each station, and you're on there for maybe 5 minutes. So you're moving around these different stations. It could be an audition if you're going for something like theatre studies or acting, performing arts, something like that. There could be a group interview involved as well. So we sometimes do this as part of our primary teaching interviews. The reason for that is we feel it's important to see how you respond in a group environment as well as a one-on-one environment. And there could be tests involved as well. So there's lots of different variety. Find out what it's going to be so you can prepare for that format. And then work out an outfit that's going to fit in with whichever format you've got. So for me, for the panel one, obviously I had to dress quite smartly, but for the informal interview that I had, it was just wearing whatever I was going to wear for the open day, so fairly casual, fairly comfortable, and then just going in for that chat. So you need to make sure your outfit fits in with whatever it is, and also think about what you feel confident in and what you feel comfortable in as well. I know for girls we have a few more options in terms of looking smart without going for a suit, but for the boys you don't necessarily even have to go for a suit. Even Oxbridge say that. They say so long as you look smart, a suit isn't always necessary. So think something that you think fits in with the type of interview that you have, and also something you feel confident in. Find out whether or not you need to take anything with you. Now, you may not have to, but it may be that you need to take examples of coursework. It may be letters of recommendation from work experience placements. If you don't need to take anything, find out if there's something that's worth taking along with you. Because the worst thing that can happen is you prepare to take something along, you ask them if you can show it to them, and they say no. Well, worse off, and you haven't lost anything really. But if you have the time to show them something additional, which could be somebody else telling you, telling them their opinion about you, or maybe giving a slightly different aspect to the information that you've already given, well, it does give you a little bit of an advantage. And if you are going to take something, just take time to prepare it so that it is in an easily accessible format that you can just show to the interviews once you get there. Do you know who's going to interview you? Because I think it's polite and also an important thing to find out. Because if you're going to be interviewed by a range of people, you could be interviewed by somebody from a course or from a module that you're really interested in. So when it comes to asking questions, you know who to direct that question to. So find out who those people actually are. And then in terms of other preparation that you need to do, make your travel arrangements well in advance, book hotels if you need to, work out your transport, how you're going to get there. Things that really throw you on the day are simple things, but things like, where do you need to park? Is it pay and display? Do you need to be able to have the cash, or can you pay by card? How long does it take to walk from where you're parking the car to the actual interview itself? Do you need to take public transport? If so, when should you book that ticket for? Don't book it for the one that arrives just before you need to get there. If you can do a dummy run, if it's somewhere nearby, that's always useful, but with universities, it tends to not be possible. So you need to make sure you've got the maps, you know where you're going, you've got all the directions, and always aim to arrive early. I say at least 20 minutes. Doing the job that I do, I end up normally travelling all around the country, visiting different schools and colleges I've never been to before. It's easy to get lost, it's easy to be delayed. If you arrive early, it doesn't make any bad impression at all. You've got time to grab a coffee, re-look through your application, think about the things you want to say, kind of calm down your nerves if you've got them. If you arrive late, you start on the back foot by apologising. It doesn't create a very good impression. You're probably going to be flustered and worked up as well. If you are going to be arriving late, and it could be totally out of your control, that's fine, just let them know in advance, so then maybe they can put somebody else into that time slot. But arriving early is really what we recommend. And if you can practice with a mock interview, that's really important to do that, because if you practice with somebody that you don't necessarily know and you can kind of replicate that format, it just helps you imagine the interview and get some practice in beforehand as well. So other things that you need to prepare before you get there then, well, the course details. It's the same as going for a job interview. They'd expect you to have read the job spec and know it inside out, so read the course details as well. Do your background reading, reread the prospectus, quiz current students if you can. So I don't know if you maybe can go on UniBuddy, you can ask them questions before you get there. Maybe you know somebody who's already been on that course or been at that university. If the interview's part of an open day, take the chance to ask the students who are showing you around on the open day as well. You'll need to be able to answer why you want to study that course at that particular university. So it's important that you be able to distinguish the individual course details for that one. So not just generally the subject, but what that university has to offer. And it's also important to learn about current issues in your subject, anything at current affairs, in the media, in the news, to be up to date with it. So if you've written your personal statement, you might have already done this, but you need to kind of build on that and do something really current and up to date. Whenever I run mock interviews, I always ask them a question about something in current affairs. It doesn't take me very long to find something, and I'm always really surprised when I do ask a question somebody doesn't know. So somebody applying for design courses had talked about how they were really interested in Banksy. This was at the time where Banksy's work had been sold in the auction and then it had gone through the shredder. Asked him about it and he had absolutely no idea about that event, and a lot of people did, even if they weren't fans of him. So it kind of showed him up a little bit as having included something in his personal statement that you started to wonder what was true and what wasn't. So keep up to date with these issues and make sure you're reading things in broadsheets, maybe studies, maybe big decisions in the kind of industry before you get there. You're also obviously going to be talking about you. So it sounds really stupid to say, but you need to think about what you're going to say about yourselves when you get there. So think about the strengths and weaknesses that you have. So they may ask you flat out question, what are your weaknesses? So you don't want to be caught on the spot and go, well, I find it difficult to learn anything new and I don't really concentrate in the morning. So it would be something you need to have a positive spin on. Think about qualities and achievements that you have that are relevant for that particular course. You need to think about why you're studying your current courses, what your career interest is going to be. There's going to be questions about your personal statement, and there's going to be a section where they ask if you've got any questions as well. So you need to do all this prep work in advance. You don't necessarily know what the questions are going to be, but if you do all of these things and remind yourself about the strengths, the skills, the qualities, the things that you want to talk about, it just makes it much easier to slot them into the questions as you get asked them in the interview itself. So at the interview, please remember to switch off your mobile. There's nothing that annoys an admissions tutor more than that, because you can imagine they tend to go off quite a bit in lectures. You need to get into the right frame of mind. So be enthusiastic, be confident, and be positive. You're not there to put yourselves down. You're there to get yourselves across in a really positive manner without coming across as arrogant. I know it's sometimes a fine line, but just keep that in mind. Try not to say anything unfavourable or negative. If you do, like I said, try and change it and put a positive spin on it. And then just be polite, smile, look as if you want to be there. I know you might be dreading it and some people get really nervous, but the thing about interviews is, and it's worth remembering, is we're not trying to catch you out. It's not about finding out what you don't know, it's about finding out what you do know and trying to get as much information as we can from you. So we don't want you being worked up and uncomfortable, we want you to be calm so you can perform the best that you can. So try and remember that every time. So be interested in terms of your body language and look as if you're listening to the questions, you want to talk to them. Eye contact is really important as well. And if you've got any habits that are really irritating, so I tend to play with jewellery when I get nervous and it distracts me, it will distract the interviewer. Try and keep things like that in check. And don't stare down at the ground, don't avoid eye contact with people, don't look uncomfortable. Just try and get that confidence across in your body language as well. I know it's easy to say be calm and be relaxed, but as I've said, there's no point getting worked up. So if you've got any techniques that can calm you down before you get in there, even better. Listen to what they're asking you. Pause to think as well. I think it's really bad when somebody launches into 10 seconds of umming and ahhing instead of sitting back and thinking about what they want to say. Because from our point of view, we'd rather you do that anyway. Think about what your answers are going to be and then speak clearly. So if you're going to put the time and effort in to think about how you're going to answer the questions, we want to be able to hear them. If anybody asks you a question and you don't understand what they're asking you or quite what they're after, then ask them to repeat it or ask them to say it in a different way, because it's worse that you just carry on regardless answering something than we're sat there thinking, that's definitely not why I asked them. You only ever need a rough idea about how you're going to answer questions. Don't learn something off by heart. So if you do the prep work that I already mentioned, then you should know the kind of things you want to add in. So if you just learn something, it sounds like you're just repeating that thing over and over. And then if you do have a tour and admissions test on unexpected tasks as part of the interview, just treat it as part of the whole experience. Because if you do well in an interview, but then take no interest in the tour around the department, people might start thinking, well, they were just doing it for the good interview practice. They're not really bothered about being here. So kind of keep this up for the entire interview process in a way. So there are lots of questions that they might ask you. I mean, they're going to be specific to your subject. So these are general ones. They'll start off with a nice icebreaker. How was your journey? Did you find us okay? Did you manage to park the car? Nothing like they're going to start with, what do you think is the most significant development in the NHS in the past 50 years? They're going to try and get you calm, relaxed first of all. They may ask about what specific aspect of the course you're most interested in. If you've had any practical experience in the field, they might pick out something for your personal statement. They're going to ask you questions about the subject you're applying for. So just like I said, think about the questions you think you're going to get asked. And as I've said, they'll always say, have you got any questions that you want to ask? The worst thing you can do at this point is go, no, I'm fine, thanks. Because they're just going to think, well, are they really that interested? With these questions, the examples that I've got up here, please just ask the ones that you want to find the answers to, because this is a two-way process. It's not just them deciding whether or not to offer you the place, it's you deciding whether or not you want it as well. And another reason why it's so important to do your prep work beforehand in terms of the course is one question I've planted in here. How many contact hours a week are there? That's a great question, but not if you open the prospectus and the first thing that it says is there'll be 10 to 15 hours of contact time a week. So another reason to do your prep work with the course is to make sure you're not asking questions that they feel that you should have already known the answers to. So these are just some examples. I think what did last year's graduates go on to do is always a nice one, because it shows that you're thinking ahead and thinking about what you can do once you finish the course. So hopefully you do all the prep work, you know what to expect, you've got a rough idea of the questions, you turn up to the interview in time, you read over your application, you know what you're going to say when you're answering the questions, your body language is good, the eye contact is good, you've asked if you don't understand, you've gone through everything really well. At the end, please thank the interviewer, because again, it's only about being polite and thanking them for their time. I think what's really important from your point of view is don't worry about the outcome afterwards. It's over and there's nothing you can do about it. If you put in the time and effort to do the preparation and did the best that you can in the interview, there's nothing else anybody can ask of you. Make the most out of being at the university at that day, because have a look around, speak to the students like I said, and keep making sure that you remember it's a two-way process and you're also deciding. The university will send the decision to UCAS and they'll then update that on track, so you log in to find out what happened. And then please remember, if you're unsuccessful, the reasons can be really small. So there could be hundreds or thousands of people applying for very few places, and it could just be that you're genuinely just not suited for that course at that particular university. It doesn't mean that you won't be suited to a course elsewhere. And then, as I said, just finally consider whether or not you're going to be happy studying at that university. And if you want to find out more, there's loads of websites out there to help you out. Loads of example questions. Studential especially has forums where people chat about their experiences of certain university interviews for certain subjects. So if you want to give yourself a heads up about the kind of questions that you might be asked, then have a look at there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Llinos. That was excellent. To be honest, it applies to university interviews, of course, but I bet anyone that's going for any job interviews in the future will find some brilliant tips there as well. So fantastic, really, really good session. If I can now introduce our final speaker, and while I'm doing so, Aemilia, feel free to get your slides ready, etc. That's Aemilia, who's joined us from the University of Suffolk. And she's universities coming up are going to be fairly busy with Clearing Plus, Clearing Plus. And Aemilia is going to give us an introduction to what to expect with Clearing Plus. There's been a few changes and what they are. So without further ado, I'll pass the floor over to you, Aemilia.
Hi everyone. So as Jon says, I'm Aemilia. I'm part of the outreach team at the University of Suffolk, and I'm just going to run through what kind of clearing is, how to prepare for it, how it works. So hopefully, if you do find that you go into the clearing system via UCAS, you'll have a really good experience. So what is clearing? So basically, clearing matches university applicants who are not holding offers to courses that haven't been filled yet. So if you've applied through UCAS and heard back from all of your university choices, but you're not holding any offers, you'll become eligible to use clearing. And the reason that you might end up in the clearing system, there are several reasons. So it might be when you receive your results, if you have not met, just skip through. So it might be that you actually didn't receive any offers in the first place. It might be that you've declined all the offers that you were made, so you did receive one or more offers, but you decided for whatever reason that you don't want to take up those offers. It might be that you were holding a firm or insurance, that you were holding firm and insurance choices, but unfortunately your exam results didn't meet the conditions. You can actually ask to be released, so you might be holding a firm or insurance offer and you've met the conditions of that offer, but you no longer want to go to that university. And if you apply for the first time after the 30th of June, you will automatically go into the clearing system, so you won't go through sort of in the rest of the cycle. So how kind of do you use clearing? So if you find yourself in one of the situations that I've just mentioned, when you go into your UCAS, your track status will update to you are in clearing. And you'll then find that you have a clearing number. So during the rest of the cycle, you have a UCAS personal ID that you will use to log in and that universities will recognise you by. So in clearing, you then get this additional one. So your clearing ID number, and you can find that on your welcome page. You can use the search tool to look for courses that are accepting clearing applications. So that would mean that you would type in what you were looking for, and the search tool will bring up a list of courses that would potentially be of interest to you. So this year in UCAS have introduced something called Clearing Plus. So this will search the vacancies for you, and it will give you a list of the top 50 that are best suited to you based on your application, but also based on what those universities have said that they will be looking for. So it will look at things like matching you up based on grades. You can use these to look at the matches that it makes you, but also universities can actually contact you through the Plus system. So it might be that you will be approached by universities who've seen that you match their courses in Clearing Plus, or you can click the I'm interested button, and then that university will go ahead and contact you. If you find a course that you're interested in via the search tool or in Clearing Plus, you'll need to contact the university directly. So they'll ask for details of your qualifications, and we'll let you know informally on the phone and or via email whether they want to make you an offer. You can approach as many universities in clearing as you want for an informal discussion, but you can only refer yourself to one uni at a time and track. So unlike in the rest of the system, when you refer yourself simultaneously to 5 universities, you can't do that during clearing. You can only do one at a time. So once you've received the offer that you want to accept, the informal offer, you will then add that course as your choice in UCAS track. So we've already touched on some of the ways that UCAS, that clearing is different to the rest of the UCAS cycle. So we'll just have a quick look at those in a bit more detail. So one of the differences is that universities will often drop their entry requirements, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be any conditions that you will need to meet. They won't be exam conditions because obviously you'll have your exam results by this time. But they might ask you, before they will make you an offer, they might want to ask you to an interview, which will almost certainly this year be a phone interview. They might want to see a portfolio or something like that. So do check, they'll tell you, but also do just make sure that you're aware of what they're actually going to ask you to do. Some universities are happy to reconsider applications that they've previously rejected, and it may, in some cases, they will even reconsider you for the same course. But that is something that you would need to check with the university, make clear to them when you approach them if you have already applied, because there are some universities that say they will not consider you for the same course in the same cycle if you've already been unsuccessful. So another difference is that you don't send your UCAS application off to universities to consider during clearing. You'll approach them directly, as you've already mentioned. But this means that the unis can't see your details, they can't see your results, they can't see your personal statements. So they'll ask you for the information when you're speaking to them. So they will talk you, when you call them, they will talk you through and ask you for your grades probably from GCSEs up to the qualifications that you've done the most recently. Because you can only refer your application to one university at a time during clearing, basically referring yourself means that you firmly accept the offer. So if you then decide that you don't want to accept it after all, you'll have to ask that university to release you back into clearing. So the offer doesn't kind of sit there ready for you to accept it. The fact that you've referred yourself means that you accept it. So you can't decline it without asking the university. There is another system that operates kind of, I guess, in parallel with clearing. That's called UCAS adjustment. So everybody applies to universities based at least partly on your exam results or your predicted exam results. But what can happen, obviously, is that you might actually do a lot better than you're expecting. And that might mean that you would now meet the entry requirements of some universities that perhaps you didn't apply to initially because you didn't think you would get the grades. So in this case, and only if you want to, you can use UCAS adjustment. So there's no reason that you should use UCAS adjustment if you're perfectly happy with the offers that you already have. It might well be that, you know, you've visited the university several times, you're really comfortable, you're looking forward to going there, in which case there's no reason to use adjustment. However, if you do want to use adjustment, it's a system which allows you to approach other universities to see if they'd consider you without losing the place that you're currently holding. So unlike in the rest of clearing where you would be in the clearing system because you're not holding a place, in this system you can hold a place and have a look around. So you could approach multiple universities, but you can only make one adjustment choice. So you would speak to those universities and find out whether they would be able to make you an offer. And then, unlike in the rest of the clearing cycle, you would refer, the university would refer themselves to you. So you can only verbally accept one choice because only one university in clearing can refer itself to you. If you then decline the new offer, you can't have another adjustment choice. So unlike in clearing where, you know, if you wanted to, you could decline or you could ask to be released by several universities, you can't do that in adjustment. You can only have the one chance, I guess, basically. So adjustment opens on A-level results day. So this year, that's the 13th of August. And from that time, if you want to use adjustment, you have 5 24-hour periods from the time you enter adjustment in which to find a new offer. So if you entered at 2 p.m. on the 13th of August, you'd have until 2 p.m. on the 18th of August. Adjustment closes for good on the 31st of August. So even if at that point you still had some of your 24-hour periods left, you can't use adjustment past that point. So here are just a few tips that I put together, because obviously awaiting and receiving your exam results, it can be really stressful, especially if things don't quite go to plan. So you can make things a bit easier by kind of planning in advance, thinking about whether you'd be happy to search for a place via clearing. So there are other options. You know, if you think, no, you know, I've got my heart absolutely set on the university, that's my firm choice, I would rather take a year out and reapply, then that's absolutely fine. But obviously it's less stressful for you if you've thought about that in advance. You don't have to just apply for the same subject in clearing either. So you can, you could apply to something different. Now, probably that's going to be difficult if you decide that you want to do something that's completely different, because you know you will have taken A-level subjects or equivalent, you will have written a personal statement for the subject that you originally applied for. But you know, don't rule out kind of cognate subjects. So for example, if you don't have a place for medicine, would you be happy to consider maybe biomedical science? Think about joint degrees. So if you want to do, if you applied for pure history, maybe consider history and politics or something like that. Avoid making snap decisions in clearing because you're concerned about not having a university place. When you speak to universities, make sure that you ask questions about the things that are important to you. So one good example would be that some universities aren't able to guarantee accommodation for clearing students. So do remember to check. During clearing, most universities will have student ambassadors and staff on hand to take questions. So don't feel like you can't quiz them like you normally would. You know, if sports is really important to you, if social life is really important to you, if you know the facilities in the town or city are really important to you, ask those questions just as you would if you were not in the clearing system. Universities will want to speak to you directly rather than to a parent, carer or teacher, so do make sure that you contact them yourself. This creates a better first impression, but also some universities might just refuse to speak to someone other than you for data protection reasons. Bear in mind that universities can't see your results until you choose them in track, so you'll need to talk them through your grades. Make sure you know what you got, especially in GCSEs, as this can be important. Also, don't be tempted to fib about your results. The university will know that you've done that, because once you refer yourself to them, they will see your UCAS verified results. So they'll know if you haven't been truthful about what you got. So universities will contact you via phone or email during clearing, so make sure that you give accurate contact details and keep checking both of, or keep checking your email and your phone. Most universities will hold open events for clearing. Obviously this year they'll be virtual, but that's still a really good opportunity to speak to staff, students, and probably go on a virtual tour and get a feel for the place. And lastly, I just want to wish you luck and just say every year many thousands of students find their places via clearing and go on to have an amazing time at uni. So, I mean, I've had people say that getting their place in clearing was the best thing that happened to them, and they're so glad that they actually, ended up at that university, perhaps rather than the one they originally had as their firm choice. So don't worry, don't panic if you do find yourself in clearing, because your perfect place could just be waiting for you. So good luck with results, good luck if you do find yourselves in clearing, and thanks very much for listening.